Do me a favor. I don't want to do a countdown before I do the scene.
Countdown.
No countdown. Can we just do it off of action?
Just in your own time. Good. So
I'm not a rocket ship, okay?
Okay.
All right.
And action.
Let's see, baby.
Erica, give me a bottle of water.
You know what it is, Damien? I'm sorry, not to get into his thing, but if I'm crying, should Osiris be crying too?
No, it's happening.
We're crying. No, we're crying.
No, we're crying.
Just call it, man.
Hey, Kurt, you can cry.
Oh,
So you can cry.
thanks.
Everybody crying. It's
Say for
sad.
this,
You know what?
wondering if it's
You
the
see
right
how
move.
agitated he is now?
I know.
Let's make lemonade. Okay. Let's go to work.
Still rolling.
This is Falcon 1. We have the ridge in sight approximately 2 miles.
Peter, these jets are about to crest this ridge line. I got about 200 pounds of your pants. I need to know if we're ready to go.
You're my... See, that's what I think it is, Damien. I think it's the line.
Yeah.
I don't know if Four Leaf would say that. Would he? Four Leaf?
Were you crying when your hairs blew up?
No. See,
No.
he didn't? Yeah. I mean, it just,
So
that's
now
what
we
it
in
feels
rewrites,
like.
right?
Where you going?
Let's rewrite it. Action Jackson can't cry. That's what's going down.
I'll deal
You know
with
what, Kirk? I'm ready to do the scene.
Hey,
What
I'm in
scene?
it.
The scene is about emotionality. Where is it? Now it's time to flip the script. Be until Chinese New Year wait for my man to cry.
Here they come!
No! Stop tailgating me, you pasty teabag. Can I make a pee-pee?
Inbound. I know. Oh, get the fruit, Jesus! That's the signal. Go, go, go!
In a world overflowing with movies, we need a hero. Someone to separate the bad from the good.
Hi everyone, I'm Em and welcome to Verbal Diorama episode 354, Tropic Thunder. This is the podcast that's all about the history and legacy of movies you know and movies you don't. That's also the Milli Vanilli of Patriots. Welcome to Verbal Diorama, whether you're a brand new listener, whether you're a regular returning listener. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for choosing to listen to this podcast. I am, as always, so happy to have you here for the history and legacy of Tropic Thunder. And if you are a brand new listener, welcome to this podcast. You've got a lot of episodes to catch up on. But if you are a regular returning listener, thank you for continuing to listen and support this podcast for as long as you have. This podcast has been going for over 7 years now and 354 episodes. So it's been a long time in the making for this podcast, but I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for your support. It genuinely means so much. If you are new, this podcast I do completely by myself. I have no help doing this podcast. So literally all the support is so grateful and so appreciated. And I have been on a bit of a historic run on this podcast because recent episodes have included movies like The Shawshank Redemption and Pulp Fiction, which are two of the biggest movies of all time that a lot of podcasts talk about. Not a lot of podcasts seem to talk about Tropic Thunder, or at least no podcasts that I'm aware of have talked about Tropic Thunder. And this is a movie that's been on the big list, which is a list of movies that I want to cover on this podcast for such a long time. And like all of the movies on the big list, I always say I'll get to them eventually. And I've just never got round to Tropic Thunder until now. And I think that's mostly because it is a very controversial movie for so many reasons. But the main reason is probably not the reason that you think. So, war. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing, except being lampooned by Hollywood. Grab a can of booty sweat and let's get into it. Deep in the jungles of Vietnam, the most expensive war movie never made is being filmed. However, nothing is going well for first-time director Damien Cockburn. The set is in disarray, the big-name actors' egos are taking over the production, and so far, filming is a disaster. There's failing action star Tug Speedman, drug-addicted comedian Jeff Portnoy, 5-time Academy Award-winning method actor Kirk Lazarus, the only guy who's read the script and attended the boot camp, novice actor Kevin Sandusky, and closeted gay booty sweat rapper Al Pacino. So Cockburn, after being threatened by profane, ill-tempered studio head Les Grossman that he'll shut down the movie, decides to film the whole thing guerrilla style to get the performances he needs from his prima donna actors. He helicopters his cast deeper into the jungle with a skeleton crew, informs them that the real-life set is rigged with hidden cameras, gives them the script and leaves them to their own devices, only to immediately step on an old landmine. Let's run through the cast. We have Ben Stiller as Tug Speedman, Jack Black as Jeff Portnoy, Robert Downey Jr. as Kirk Lazarus, Nick Nolte as Four-Leaf Tayback, Steve Coogan as Damien Cockburn, Jay Baruchel as Kevin Sandusky, Danny McBride as Cody Underwood, Brandon T. Jackson as Al Pacino, Bill Hader as Rob Slolum, Brandon Suhu as Tran, Reggie Lee as Byung, Matthew McConaughey as Rick Peck, and Tom Cruise as Les Grossman. It also features cameos by Tobey Maguire, Tyra Banks, Maria Menounos, Martin Lawrence, the Mooney Suzuki, Jason Bateman, Lance Bass, Jennifer Love Hewitt, Alicia Silverstone, Christine Taylor, and John Voight. Tropic Thunder has a screenplay by Justin Theroux, Ben Stiller and Ethan Coen, story by Ben Stiller and Justin Theroux, and was directed by Ben Stiller. And back in 1987, Ben Stiller had a small part in Steven Spielberg's World War II drama Empire of the Sun, which also starred a young Christian Bale, set in a Japanese prisoner of war internment camp. Although Bale nearly quit acting as a result of the gruelling production, the film received acclaim for showing a realistic depiction of being a prisoner of war. Stiller was a relative unknown at the time of the film's production and observed the other actors returning from intense actor boot camps used to prepare them for war scenes, and he found it hilarious when his peers treated a 2-week simulated camping trip like a life-changing traumatic combat experience. This contrast between Hollywood vanity and real-world warfare became the core premise for a comedy script. Stiller met Justin Theroux in the mid-90s. Theroux was doing a play in New York with a friend of Stiller, and the friend introduced them. They wanted to work together, and Stiller mentioned this idea of a war-based comedy. The idea made them laugh. It was part Vietnam comedy, part making fun of Oscar-winning actors, and part action movie, a satire of the serious Vietnam-based war movies that had made a name of Oliver Stone and Francis Ford Coppola. The initial script concept was to have actors go to a mock boot camp and return with post-traumatic stress disorder. Stiller already had a lot of the characters and the tone of the movie that he wanted to do, but it needed to be organised and turned into a proper script. In 2002, Stiller and Theroux were joined writing the script by Ethan Coen, and they worked out a story that not only mocked actors, but filmmaking in general, as well as satirising Vietnam War films. Now, I must stress, there's nothing funny about the Vietnam War. The war lasted 20 years, from 1955 to 1975. The 1954 Geneva Accords had split the country into North and South, pitting communist North Vietnam and its allies China and the Soviet Union against South Vietnam and its main ally, the United States. It escalated heavily in the 1960s to stop the spread of communism, peaking with over 500,000 American troops sent over to fight. Estimates of Vietnamese soldiers and civilians killed range from 970,000 to 3 million. Some 275,000 to 310,000 Cambodians, 20,000 to 62,000 Laotians, and 58,220 US service members died. North Vietnam captured Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam, in 1975 and declared victory, renaming the capital Ho Chi Minh City and unifying the country into one communist Vietnam. So, the Vietnam War is not really ripe for satire, but Vietnam War movies were. So Stiller, Theroux and Coen would watch the DVD extras on Vietnam War movies. And not just Vietnam War movies, but war movies in general. There would be interviews with the young actors playing these war heroes, where they would liken their experience to fighting in an actual war. And this amused Stiller, Theroux and Coen, because what do you mean it's like fighting a war? It's nothing like fighting a war. So they wanted to make fun of the actors who took it all so seriously and went method to win awards, and felt like their experience actually mirrored that of a genuine war veteran. Indeed, the first movie to ever win Best Picture at the Oscars in 1927 was a war movie, Wings, which was set during the First World War. And it would be Steven Spielberg, a director who has won Best Picture and or Best Director awards for serious war movies like Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan, and been nominated for War Horse, Letters from Iwo Jima and Bridge of Spies, who would get credited for Tropic Thunder being made at all. Spielberg read the script, and DreamWorks would greenlight the movie shortly after Spielberg suggested they make it. Ben Stiller had met Tom Cruise when he played his stunt double in a skit for the MTV Movie Awards in 2000 for Mission Impossible 2, and while they were still developing the Tropic Thunder script in the early 2000s, Cruise read it. There was no Les Grossman character in it at all at this point, and Cruise suggested they needed a secondary villain other than the Flaming Dragon and its 12-year-old leader. He suggested a greedy studio executive monitoring the movie and really showing how gross the back office of Hollywood could be. It fixed some plot holes in the movie, and the new studio head character was written into the script in 2002. In 2003, he was named Todd Berlinger. Later that year, he was renamed Todd Green, where he became ever so more profane. A couple of weeks later, he was renamed Philip Green, and then, in his final form, Les Grossman. But the frequency of discussions with Tom Cruise slowed down because he's Tom Cruise, and so when they went into casting the movie, Tom Cruise was the furthest from their minds. Now, it's worth us looking into where Tom Cruise was in the mid-2000s because his career went a bit haywire in 2006. After a lucrative 14-year partnership, Tom Cruise's contract with Paramount wasn't renewed, and it was a shock to many in Hollywood. It was nothing to do with his earning potential, despite Mission Impossible 3 being a financial disappointment. It was to do, allegedly, with his off-screen antics. Sumner Redstone, chairman of Viacom Inc., which owned the studio, claimed Cruise's recent conduct had not been acceptable to Paramount. His public appearances had been attracting increasingly negative publicity over the years. He had recently started a well-publicised relationship with Katie Holmes. In 2005, he not only had his infamous couch jumping on the Oprah Winfrey Show, but also publicly criticised Brooke Shields for taking antidepressants to cope with postnatal depression, also called postpartum depression. He and Holmes had a baby in 2006, which led to more inches in gossip columns and celebrity magazines, including a 22-page spread in Vanity Fair in autumn 2006. Not to mention his outspoken views on Scientology and anti-psychiatry. His image needed a reset. Some might say that a role as a bold, foul-mouthed studio executive would be exactly what was needed to overhaul his public image and win back critical favour. But I guess we'll come back to that. Originally, Ben Stiller had no intention to star in the movie. He was just the writer and director. And then he had an idea, according to Vulture, to cast Keanu Reeves as Tug Speedman. And that is the obligatory Keanu reference for this episode in the bag. Stiller frequently played a sleazy, fast-talking Hollywood agent on The Ben Stiller Show, and with Reeves as the potential movie's lead, Stiller could position himself as Speedman's two-faced agent Rick Peck. But somehow, he nixed the idea of Keanu and opted to cast himself as Tug Speedman, leaving the role of super agent Rick Peck wide open. Stiller wanted to cast Tom Cruise in the part, which was a cameo at the time, but Cruise couldn't get the script out of his head and kept coming back to Les Grossman, with two caveats. One, that he wanted to play the role with large hands, and two, he wanted to dance. And Cruise went all in on creating the character. He didn't hold back at table readings, he went fully into the character and worked hard to make the character unique. He'd never done anything like it before, he's never done anything like it since, and he fully embraced Les Grossman. Ben Stiller approached Robert Downey Jr., and he was in Hawaii on holiday during pre-production on Iron Man. He filmed Iron Man between March and June 2007. Stiller and Downey met up in Hawaii, where Stiller told him he was casting for Tropic Thunder, and he wanted him for the, at the time, Irish method actor Kirk Lazarus. After being told the character was going to have a pigmentation alteration to become African American, Downey was initially hesitant, saying casting him was the stupidest idea he'd ever heard. But after thinking on it, he realised he wanted to do it, to make fun of the extreme lengths actors will go, how pretentious they are, and the absurdity of blackface. Downey admitted he knew the role carried a massive risk of being a disastrous, offensive misfire, but accepted because the target of the satire was the actor's ego and not people of colour. It was Downey who changed Lazarus's nationality to Australian, mostly because he felt he could keep the accent up. Downey also went method, choosing to continue playing the character outside of takes. He improvised many of his lines, and yes, he stayed in character up until the DVD commentary, which is great, by the way. I highly recommend listening to it. Downey modelled Lazarus on a mix of Russell Crowe, Colin Farrell and Daniel Day-Lewis, but he'd also kind of take inspiration from his own father. Putney Swope, a 1969 comedy that also satirised the portrayal of race in Hollywood films, was written and directed by Robert Downey Sr. The movie had the title character, Putney Swope, played by a black actor, Arnold Johnson. But Johnson's voice wasn't used in the final movie. It was dubbed in post-production by Robert Downey Sr. So technically, both Robert Downeys have voiced black characters in their time. Robert Downey Jr. would reference the 1986 C. Thomas Howell movie Soul Man as to how blackface could be misinterpreted. Howell plays a wealthy white man whose father refuses to pay for Harvard Law School, and when he's denied a student loan, he decides to take tanning pills to look like an African American man, as the only scholarships available are for black students. It was supposed to expose racial stereotyping and the ridiculousness of racism, but members of the NAACP spoke out against the film, and an African American student group at UCLA organised a picket of a cinema screening, and that's why no one ever really talks about Soul Man anymore. Downey would spend 2 hours in makeup for the role of Kirk Lazarus, including prosthetics by Rick Baker. Baker designed the specialised skin darkening and aesthetic look. On-set application was managed daily by makeup artists John Blake and Greg Nelson. Baker had been originally asked to Photoshop several well-known white Hollywood actors into black men by a DreamWorks executive, and he didn't know why. Included in the list was Robert Downey Jr. The actual makeup Baker did in real life differed from his original Photoshopped images. And where Tropic Thunder differs is the inclusion of an actual black actor to call out the ridiculous nature of a white Australian actor taking the role of Black Staff Sergeant Lincoln Osiris. For the role of Al Pacino, after offering the part to Kevin Hart and him turning it down due to not being confident he could play a gay character, Mos Def was offered the part. Not wanting to parody the rap industry, Mos Def asked the writers to change the character to an R&B musician. But R&B musicians don't tend to try transitioning into acting like rap stars do. It would lead to the actor leaving by mutual consent. Brandon T. Jackson had taken part in 13 auditions for the character and would then get the call to offer him the role. Jeff Portnoy was written with Jack Black in mind and was partially based on Chris Farley, but the Eddie Murphy comparisons are right there. The role of Rick Peck would go to regular Stiller collaborator Owen Wilson, but after he attempted suicide in 2007, Wilson dropped out and was replaced by Matthew McConaughey. The creation of Les Grossman included a fat suit plus silicone prosthetics for his head, neck, chest and hands. 6 people were charged with hand-punching the curly human hair into the scalp, arms and chest. Each hair had to be punched individually. Producer Stuart Kornfeld would joke that Grossman was based on him, as he was chubby and balding, but then he would insist Grossman wasn't based on anyone in particular. It's been claimed, though, that he's partially based on Scott Rudin, Joel Silver, Harvey Weinstein, and Paramount head Sumner Redstone, the same Sumner Redstone who had severed Paramount's relationship with Cruise a few years prior. A coincidence? I think not. Crews would don a whole body fat suit for the role, a cotton jumpsuit that they attached layers of muscles and fat, and custom pads made out of foam, and beading from the inside of a pillow to mimic the fat movement. They had to make 3 suits. The character moved around a lot, and Crews would be so soaked in sweat that they rotated the suits. He would have one in the morning and then put on a fresh one after lunch. His makeup would also be designed by the same person who did his makeup on Interview with the Vampire, Michelle Burke. And it was Crews who made up his own dance moves. In a makeup test, it was Stiller who added the music. And Les Grossman was unlike any character he'd played before, not just in looks but in personality and mannerisms. Justin Theroux would come up with more vulgar lines for Crews to read. The more F-bombs, the better, and within 3 days of filming, Crews had the character in the bag, with the plan being the character wouldn't be used in promotional material and would be a surprise for fans. Of course, that didn't stop the paparazzi, and in November 2007, images of Crews wearing a bold headpiece and a fat suit appeared on Inside Edition as well as on the internet. Crews' attorneys threatened a lawsuit if photos showing Crews in costume were published. They approached various sites that were hosting the image and quickly had it removed. Filming in Vietnam was outside of the realm of possibility, and so instead the production filmed on the Hawaiian island of Kauai. Mexico had also been considered, but Kauai offered generous tax breaks and had similar foliage, terrain and weather to Vietnam. Stiller spent more than 25 hours over 6 weeks exploring the island using all-terrain vehicles, boats and helicopters. Tropic Thunder was the first major studio production on Kauai in 5 years. It's the largest production filmed on the island to date, and contributed more than $60 million to the local economy, with 500 residents asked to portray villagers in the film. After 6 months of pre-production, filming began on location in July 2007 and finished in December 2007 over 7 separate locations on the island. Much of the filming took place on private land as well as conservation status designated areas. 2 units shot simultaneously on the island from the ground and an aerial unit shot from helicopters. And this is a wholly practical movie. Many of the sets and the bridge used for one of the final scenes were built specifically for the movie in 3 months. The island's erratic weather hampered filming with rain and lightning, which when you're working with minimal natural light and explosives is not ideal. The production consulted with famed military advisor Dale Dye to make sure the military action and jargon depicted in the movie in the film's war sequences was accurate. Dye and his company, Warrior Inc.'s advisors, Mark Ebenhock and Mike Stokey, were also on set as technical advisors for the first few weeks of filming the Vietnam battle sequences. Stiller wanted the movie's opening scene to be as real as possible, as if the actors had been through actual boot camp. So Ebenhock, a retired Marine gunnery sergeant, worked to get the actors up to speed with weapons handling, tactical moving, basically giving them the look of realistic soldiers. They took them out for training with the weaponry, showed them how to fire, how to hold their weapons and reload. And Jack Black took to working with the weapons like Jeff Portnoy to his jelly beans. Black became very proficient with the heaviest gun, an M60 machine gun which holds several hundred rounds. He injured himself during filming and spent most of the movie with bruised ribs. Dale Dye also worked closely with costume designer Marlene Stewart to check all the military uniforms for authenticity, as well as with stunt coordinator Brad Martin and his team of stuntmen who portrayed the US Army infantrymen, Viet Cong soldiers and trans-guerrilla army. The opening war scene was filmed over 3 weeks and required 50 stuntmen. To capture the feeling of being in a grand war movie, helicopter pilot and aerial coordinator Alan Perwin was brought in. His credits include some of the best-known war films of the last 2 decades, as well as Die Hard, The Lost World Jurassic Park and Transformers, among others. He was responsible for bringing in and flying the Vietnam-era Huey military helicopters used during filming, as well as manning the aerial choppers used for air-to-air and air-to-ground filming. Perwin was a pioneer of the aerial cinematography industry and often put himself in danger to get a shot. But he was also a philanthropist, not only providing support to the Coast Guard during Hurricane Katrina, but he provided medical transportation services for patients free of charge through his company Helinet Aviation. He flew more than 30,000 organs for transplant and nearly 3,000 children for Children's Hospital Los Angeles. Tragically, Alan Perwin died in a plane crash in Colombia in 2015 during the making of another Tom Cruise movie, American Made, which was said to be attributed to bad weather. Ben Stiller paid tribute to him at the time, saying, quote, "Shocked about the loss of Alan Perwin, one of the best people I knew and the greatest pilots ever. I put my life in his hands many times," unquote. Special effects coordinator Michael Menardus and his team were responsible for all the practical effects, such as bullet hits, fire and smoke, rocket explosions, squibs, and the napalm explosion. The napalm explosion was created with a 450-foot-long row of explosive pots filled with 1,100 gallons of a 90-to-10 gasoline-diesel mix that were arranged across a field lined with coconut palm trees. In one take, and at the flick of a switch, 11 cameras captured the controlled explosion. It sent a mushroom cloud fireball reaching 350 feet in the air. The entire staggered explosion consisted of 12 separate explosions, the full run of which was completed in 1.25 seconds. Due to the size and cost of the 1.25-second explosion, it could only be performed once. For the safety of the crew and cast, the detonators were added 1 hour before the explosion, and nobody was allowed to be within 400 feet during detonation. Every actor, except for Danny McBride's character who detonates the explosion, was added digitally. Some of the explosions and crashes were enhanced by CG to make them look more bombastic, excuse the pun, such as a crashing helicopter created by CG. It was the first comedy that Academy Award-winning visual effects supervisor Michael L. Fink had worked on, and he quickly realised that making war funny would mean exaggerating things that were already pretty big. The exploding bridge at the end was practical, but Stiller was shot separately, and the explosion was enhanced by compositing several explosion elements into one shot, mostly because real explosions don't tend to look as exciting once a dust cloud forms. The effects within the fake trailers that pop up to give Hollywood context to the characters were handled by a variety of companies, including CIS Vancouver, CIS Hollywood, CFE, Ignition in Santa Monica, Asylum and Digital Backlot. CIS Hollywood worked on the Scorcher and Satan's Alley trailers, and CFE did the Fatties trailer. Asylum created Al Pacino's Booty Sweat commercial, and CIS Vancouver worked on the Simple Jack trailer. Digital Backlot and Robert Stromberg created matte paintings for a hotel in Ho Chi Minh City. Stromberg would later win Academy Awards for his work on Avatar and Alice in Wonderland. And just speaking of those trailers, as a last-minute replacement, Tobey Maguire agreed to 2 hours of filming for the fake Satan's Alley trailer as a favour to Stiller and his Wonder Boys co-star Robert Downey Jr. Due to the extremes on the set, the extreme weather issues, extreme explosions, and just extremes to the max of everything, the production dished out "I Survived Ben Stiller's Comedy Death Camp" t-shirts for all the cast. The crew of the movie in the movie were all actual crew of Tropic Thunder. There were no actors playing crew members, but it just meant extra confusion because when Ben Stiller as Tug Speedman called cut, because was it actual cut or was he just acting? So a new phrase was coined, which was, "just stop." And now a word from our sponsors, which is you, if you'd like to be. Thank you for listening to this podcast. It's completely independent, made by me, and relies on listener support. If you're enjoying this episode and the work that I do, and you want to support an indie podcaster, if you have some spare change, you can financially contribute to the upkeep of this podcast. You're under no obligation. This podcast is free and always will be, but there are a couple of ways you can help if you wish to and if you have the means to. You can make a one-off donation at verbaldiorama.com/tips, or you can subscribe to the Patreon to support the show monthly at verbaldiorama.com/Patreon. All money made goes back into this podcast by paying for software subscriptions, website hosting, and new equipment. Huge thank you for your continued support. Now, let's learn some more about this movie and how Keanu Reeves is somehow connected to it. And this would normally be the time that I go into the obligatory Keanu reference for the episode, because I like to try and link him to every movie that I feature, and he is the best of men, but I've already done it because, as I said, Ben Stiller's original plan was to cast Keanu as Tug Speedman, but it never materialised. The score for Tropic Thunder was composed by Theodore Shapiro, and there were 5 songs in the movie that were not present on the official soundtrack, and they are some of the biggest songs in the movie as well. So Come On Feel the Noise by Quiet Riot, Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones, which is a Vietnam War movie special, For What It's Worth by Buffalo Springfield, Low by Flo Rida and T-Pain, and Get Back by Ludacris. They were not on the soundtrack, despite being very prevalent in the movie, especially Low by Flo Rida and Get Back by Ludacris. Now, this was the studio's big end of summer movie, and they intentionally launched a massive multi-month screening campaign to build word of mouth buzz. And they targeted various demographics to see how audiences would react to the film's highly provocative satirical humour, specifically Robert Downey Jr.'s character in blackface and Ben Stiller's Simple Jack storyline. Despite over 250 screenings, including to the NAACP and to Camp Pendleton, to show it to serving military personnel and their families, there was no major pushback, and the pushback didn't happen until right before it premiered. Controversy erupted when national disability advocacy groups saw the online marketing materials and mock posters. Several fake websites had been created for the characters and some of their prior film roles. A website for Simple Jack, which had been put up, was removed by DreamWorks on the 4th of August 2008 due to protests from disability advocates. In addition, other promotional websites were created for Make Pretty Skin Clinic, the fictitious company that performed the surgery on Kirk Lazarus, along with one for the energy drink Booty Sweat, which we could also buy from Amazon and other retailers for a brief period. On the 8th of August 2008, there was a special 30-minute fictional E-True Hollywood story airing about the making of Tropic Thunder. And in July 2008, a fake trailer for the mockumentary Reign of Madness was released. The mockumentary was a parody of Hearts of Darkness, a filmmaker's apocalypse. It follows co-writer Justin Theroux as a fictitious documentarian named Jan Jurgen, documenting the behind-the-scenes aspect of the film within the film. Marketing for the fake documentary included a movie poster and an official website prior to Tropic Thunder's release. And the mockumentary was released on the iTunes Store after the movie's release and was also included on the home video release. But even before release, the disability advocates were not happy, and a consortium of groups, including the Special Olympics and the Down Syndrome Association of Los Angeles, contacted DreamWorks and set up a meeting with CEO Stacey Snider and other senior executives to discuss their concerns about Tropic Thunder. Tropic Thunder held an early screening at the 2008 San Diego Comic-Con 2 weeks before it officially premiered on the 11th of August 2008 at the Mann Village Theatre in Westwood, California. This was 2 days before its wide release. At the premiere, several dozen disability advocates converged to protest the comedic use of the R-word. Chanting "Ban the movie, ban the word," marchers carried signs with slogans like "R-word equals hate speech" and passed out flyers urging a boycott of the movie. Security was visibly tighter. Views of the red carpet, which are normally unobstructed to the public, were blocked off by a 10-foot-high green fence. Additionally, there was no premiere after-party, which is usually customary for such a high-profile summer film. But interestingly, although there were many protests about the R-word and the depiction of the character of Simple Jack, there were no protests about blackface. Tropic Thunder released on the 13th of August 2008 and hopped over The Dark Knight to become number 1 at the box office, and despite, or maybe because of the ongoing controversies, stayed at number 1 for 3 weeks before being dethroned by Bangkok Dangerous. Tropic Thunder would stay in the top 10 for 7 weeks. And true to his word, Robert Downey Jr.'s Kirk Lazarus didn't drop character till he'd done the DVD commentary, which was recorded the morning of the premiere. Jack Black was 45 minutes late for the recording, But honestly, it speaks to the talent of Robert Downey Jr. that he holds the accent for almost 2 hours before he then transitions to an Australian accent. On its $92 million budget, Tropic Thunder grossed $110.5 million domestically and $85.2 million internationally, for a total worldwide gross of $195.7 million. Paramount were delighted with the success of the movie because not only was it a financial success, but a critical one too. It has an 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, with a critics' consensus of, with biting satire, plenty of subversive humour, and an unforgettable turn by Robert Downey Jr., Tropic Thunder is a triumphant late summer comedy. In October 2008, Paramount chose to, ironically, put end-of-year award push funds behind Tropic Thunder and began advertising for Robert Downey Jr. to receive a nomination by the Academy Awards for Best Supporting Actor. Ads were produced by Paramount Pictures, featuring Downey as Kirk Lazarus, showcasing unseen scenes from Satan's Alley, and intended for early for your consideration awareness for Downey's multi-layered role in the movie. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences would nominate Downey for Best Supporting Actor, but at the 81st Academy Awards, Downey lost to Heath Ledger, who won posthumously for his role as the Joker in The Dark Knight, and I think even 5-time Academy Award-winning Kirk Lazarus would concede his award to Heath Ledger. It's worth adding at this point that no one has won an Academy Award for acting 5 times. 4 is the record held by Katharine Hepburn. Daniel Day-Lewis, who Lazarus was partially based on, has 3, as does Meryl Streep, Jack Nicholson, Ingrid Bergman, Frances McDormand, Sean Penn and Walter Brennan. There, of course, is no sequel to Tropic Thunder, but a Les Grossman spin-off has been in the works for some time and something Tom Cruise has always talked about fondly. There was a script in the works in the early 2010s, and in 2022, Christopher McQuarrie was said to be developing the spin-off. Most recently, on the press tour for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning in 2025, he was asked whether the Les Grossman film was still a thing. And it wasn't shut down. Tom Cruise says they're talking about it. 18 years later, they're still talking about Les Grossman. Tropic Thunder is interesting in the context of it being a movie I genuinely enjoy, but a movie that also shows its flaws quite openly and honestly. As a satire of the lengths actors will go to get these coveted awards, it's pretty flawless. The idea that an actor will go fully method, live as the character, behave as the character when the camera stops rolling, it's a pretty silly thing, especially when the character isn't a great character. But the varied response to Tropic Thunder genuinely interests me. Because generally speaking, reading the thoughts of black people who've seen this movie and the fact it was viewed by black journalists and members of the NAACP, Robert Downey Jr. isn't seen as a controversial depiction of blackface. In fact, considering the topic is blackface, the backlash was minimal and continues to be so. And that's simply because blackface has historically been a way for white people to create caricatures of black people, to mock them, and to promote racial stereotypes. Now, you could think that was what Downey was doing. He was using the African-American vernacular English, he was using slang, he was using stereotypical black mannerisms. He was, to all intents and purposes, masquerading as a black man. So much so that when Brandon T. Jackson's mother visited the set, she had no idea who the other black man was supposed to be. But Downey was never mocking black people. He was mocking the actors who would have done this. It doesn't excuse blackface, and just because Downey did it, it doesn't give anyone else the right to have their own pigmentation alteration procedure. But the intention seems to be very clear. Hollywood was the aim. And I think this is where the Simple Jack stuff, unfortunately, took it way too far. Because while Downey was subtle as you can be pretending to be black when you're white, Simple Jack did turn into a caricature of mentally disabled people. And while the intention was still to satirise emotionally exploitative depictions of mental disability in movies like Rain Man, Forrest Gump, I Am Sam, as well as the actors who take these roles, it unfortunately offended a lot of people, and it does not hold up well. The copious usage of the R word is really unfortunate because This movie would hold up so much better without it. It's hard to think that 2008 was Robert Downey Jr.'s true renaissance year. He'd already been in Iron Man, and then a few months later, this movie came out, and he's so good in this movie. He outshines almost everybody. I've always been a fan of Tom Cruise when he steps outside of being Tom Cruise. I like it when he plays against type, so I thought he was hilarious in this movie. And despite Paramount dropping him at the time, they soon worked out their differences, with Cruise returning to Paramount for Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol in 2011, aka the one where he hangs off the side of the Burj Khalifa. It's worth adding there are also allegations that Les Grossman is an anti-Semitic character, but again, that's not really something that's generally spoken about as much as the controversy surrounding the Simple Jack character. Ben Stiller says he makes no apologies for this movie. He says he's proud of it and the work everyone did on it, despite the fact he did actually apologise in 2008 after the Special Olympics boycotted the movie. The character of Simple Jack may not hold up, but a lot in this movie does. Hollywood doesn't like to satirise itself much nowadays, and audience tastes have changed somewhat, but it still remains relevant to Hollywood's hypocrisy and hubris. It remains an absurd peek into the Hollywood machine and to what lengths a studio executive will go to make money and keep things under wraps. Tropic Thunder is a time capsule of a 2008 that happened, but will likely never happen again. It shone a light on the industry not many movies will even attempt to try, and highlighted the absurdity, the gall, and the self-importance of actors who will do anything for that Oscar. And if anything, we got a movie where Tom Cruise twerks. Apple bottom jeans and boots with the fur. Thank you for listening. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts on Tropic Thunder, and thank you for your continued support of this podcast. And if you like this episode on Tropic Thunder, I would also recommend the episode that I did on another movie that satirises a particular industry, which is something that Ben Stiller seems to like to do. Because in 2001, he made the movie Zoolander, which satirises the fashion industry and male models. It is also a very fun movie that also has a lot of celebrity cameos. So if you do enjoy a good Hollywood satire, then I would highly recommend the movie Zoolander, and I'd also recommend my episode on Zoolander, which is episode 265. So the next episode, come on babe, why don't we paint the town? Join me next episode for maybe more of my singing for the history and legacy of Chicago. And finally,
I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude.
bye.